This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. We continue our parish reading of Pope Francis on prayer from his book, Prayer, the Breath of New Life. Today's theme, the explanation of the Our Father, how Jesus teaches us to pray, relates so closely to today's reading. In our first reading from the book of Genesis, chapter 3, verse 1 to 8, we learned how our ancestors Adam and Eve lost their ability to communicate with God. After having eaten from the tree of knowledge, after the fall, we learned that they were hiding from the Lord God among the trees of the garden. So prayer is coming out of this hiding, its first and final step. In our second reading, in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 7, from verse 31 to 37, we learn how Jesus healed the deaf man, how he answered his deepest need. This is also an example how Jesus is praying all the time for us, offering his support. But back to the Pope's text. The request, Lord, teach us to pray, generates a rather lengthy lesson through which Jesus explains to his followers with which words and which sentiments they must address God. The first part of this lesson is precisely the Our Father. Pray thus, Father, who art in heaven. Father, that word which is so beautiful to say. We can always remain in prayer with that word alone, Father, and to feel that we have a Father, not a master or a stepfather, no, a Father. A Christian addresses God first of all by calling him Father. In this teaching that Jesus gives to his disciples, it is interesting to pause on a few instructions that crown the text of the prayer. To give us confidence, Jesus explains several things. These focus on the attitudes of the believer who prays. For example, there is the parable of the importunate friend who goes to disturb an entire family that is sleeping because a person suddenly arrived from a journey and he has no bread to offer. What does Jesus say to this man who knocks on the door and wakes his friend? I tell you, Jesus explains, though he will not get up and give him anything because he is his friend, yet because of his importunity, he will rise and gives him whatever he needs. With this, he wants to teach us to pray and to persevere in prayer. And immediately afterward, he gives the example of a father who has a hungry son. All of you fathers and grandfathers who are here, when a son or grandson asks for something, is hungry, and asks, then cries, shouts that he is hungry, what father among you, if his son asks for a fish, will instead of a fish give him a serpent? And all of you have experienced this. When the son asks, you give him what he wants to eat for his own good. With these words, Jesus makes it understood that God always responds, that no prayer will remain unheard. Why? Because he is Father and does not forget his suffering children. Here ends our reading.